Global financial and equity markets are absolutely smashed at the moment, and we have a lot of evidence now that lockdowns do work, so you should be expecting them to come. Hello, everyone. This is Chris Martenson with your SARS-CoV-2, aka the Honey Badger virus update. This is for March 16th, 2020, calling this one Smashed Markets. So let us go right to the data here and see what we can find out. First up, we don't have Italy's data up on here. The China data I'm just highly suspicious of, and I'm going to give you some more data around why that is. Anecdotal, unconfirmed, but it fits with what I think is probably the case. It just seems unlikely that China roared up to 80,000 cases, and then that was the end of that, and they just stopped. And also look at the total cases per 1 million of population now. This is a place that's getting hit hard with 400 per million population, but you're seeing other ones crop up and get up there very quickly, including Switzerland. Look at that big jump right up there. All right. But Italy is absolutely getting smashed with this thing, and a lot of tragic cases coming out of there, and hearing about how overwhelmed their hospital system is and how many of their doctors have gotten ill and things like that. It's a pretty bad situation, obviously. So Iran as well, they're reporting more, but we don't have any good data coming out of them. Look, we don't have anything in here on the serious or critical side of this. I'm going to guess that Iran's got at least one, maybe two orders of magnitude higher than that. And Spain logging in now. Spain was very lackadaisical coming out of this. The population was taking this not seriously at all. And now they're really paying the price for that. This is a virus that you absolutely have to treat with the utmost respect. And that means everybody's 6 feet away, great social distancing, people aren't going out to bars, all of that stuff. But that shouldn't need to be said. People should be able to gather this information and be informed and intelligent about it. But that's sadly not the case for whatever reason. Germany also really clocking in here and having a lot of cases show up. United States still suffering from a huge backlog of testing. We're going to find a lot more cases here once we begin to test. And I think we showed the evidence yesterday that if you track things like viral pneumonia in a variety of metropolitan areas, you can see those ticked up pretty strongly a while ago. So I'm pretty sure we have undiagnosed cases of COVID. And I've had lots of contact and emails and Twitter stories and things and snippets sent along that said that people have tried to get tested, wanted to get tested, are positive that they have this thing based on contact history and can't get tested. So it's a story of too few reagents or something. I don't know what. The UK, though, I think is next up on the list here to really start vaulting. The Netherlands, of course, making a good strong run of it here too, both because they had really bad, poor policies. Sweden, just terrible. Their health minister sounds like somebody who's might as well be a flat earther, doesn't seem to understand the basics around this virus or what it is or what it can do. Really just either horribly misinformed or I'm not sure what's going on there, but pretty bad what we're seeing there. Remember, looks like we're doubling about every 14 days. I don't have the complete data even yet for today to fill in. I think yesterday came in just under that at like 88,000, so it didn't make it to 100,000. So if that's the case, this will be 15 days we'd put here. So somewhere in that zone if we finally make it to 100,000 cases outside of China today, which we would be at, obviously, if we had proper testing in a lot of places. So let's look at a few other places. Case cluster. I think you know where this is going. This is the Canada edition. And you can see, obviously, very familiar shape of all of these curves down here. Not a lot going down in these provinces down here. But you can see what's happening in their top 4 provinces here. Similar story in Australia. Case cluster, and off they go. And this is the leader here. And second, third, fourth. So these are in ranked order. So you don't have to try and match the colors up here. And so these are 2 countries that are just about to join the other ones who've been up that particular curve story that looks like this. Remember, we want to flatten this curve. That's what we want to do. And so we actually have some really interesting data that just came out of Italy. Found this today on Twitter from Don Moynihan here coming out on March 15th, today being the 16th. Real-time evidence of flattening the curve. Lodi had the first COVID-19 case in Italy and implemented a shutdown on February 23rd. That's several weeks, 3 weeks ago now. Bergamo waited until March 8th, which was just 8 days ago. Look at the difference. So here's Lodi. They put in This is the 24th right here. So they had put a lockdown ban right in place, and they put a shutdown in as soon as they had a case. And this has been their experience here. And Bergamo waited all the way until the 8th right here. And then you can see their experience with this. So that just shows that lockdowns do work. And what does a lockdown look like? Here's a little case of deja vu. It feels like Wuhan, doesn't it? This is what we're looking at and seeing case after case. Well, actually, let's just play this because I think I got a little video on this one. This is the situation up here in northern Italy right now, and it's just looks completely like it's out of a film for some kind of plague or something like that. But this is what a lockdown looks like, and we are seeing just very few cars. All the cars that are missing in this story that you don't see, all the trucks and lorries that are missing, all the buses that are missing, those are all little economic stories that are missing. These are appointments that aren't made. These are trips that aren't taken. These are, it's fuel that's not burned. All of those things. It's just really, when you see pictures like this, you have to understand the economic consequence of this for a system like our economic system that's kind of built like a shark. It really needs to keep swimming. At least the sharks that need to always swim or else they perish. We have an economy and a financial system that's based on continuous movement, continuous heat dissipation, continuous credit growth, continuous flow of materials. When I look at a picture like this, I hear sort of a giant wrenching sound in my mind as things just shudder to a virtual halt. All right. Here's Deja Wu Part 2. I think we've heard this somewhere before, haven't we? So Cuomo, the governor of New York, asking to mobilize the Army Corps of Engineers to build out medical facilities. So they've peered into the data and they've said, we're going to need more medical facilities. And of course, they actually are. This came out yesterday. So we're starting to already see this. And New York is, I think, just peering into the future data. They see what's coming. Washington State has been hit the hardest. And of course, I think they would agree that having more medical facilities and resources, pretty critical. All right. Okay. So the Surgeon General in the United States is finally seems to have gotten to where we've been for a while, which is that he says here U.S. coronavirus cases have reached level Italy was at 2 weeks ago. All right. This just came out today. So this goes on to note that, the Surgeon General notices this and says, well, if you follow the math, it looks like this could get very bad, which of course it can. You don't actually need to get to the boom stage before you make this. And so the way this works with a pandemic like this is kind of, you have to overreact. And it feels like overreacting when you're doing it. And it's a huge overreaction even. And people really squawk, and you have to put your political neck on the line. And you got to be brave, and you got to say things that might possibly not be true. But after the fact, after the boom comes, when you look back, you realize you weren't overreacting at all. In fact, you were probably underreacting. So it's hard to do because exponential curves just catch us flat-footed like this. But the rule, if you're trained in this stuff at all, like these people should be, is that you have to absolutely overreact. And you got to overreact early and often. And you often have to do it with poor data. Because, of course, the gold standard for the pandemic approach here, you got to halt all your inbound infections. People are still flying all over the place. I could pull up this flight tracker for you, and it's still that there are a lot of planes in the sky, right? Every one of those represents a potential clustering of 50 or more people going somewhere in a little metal tube with shared air, right? So the CDC has come out and said they're I don't know how much authority they have, but they're calling for a restriction on gatherings of more than 50 people. Maybe 49 is a magic number. You're safe there, but 50, but at any rate, you got to halt the inbound infections, and we have lots and lots of travel happening all over the place. And in particular, I'm reading stories about people who think they've got this thing and they're driving home so they can be treated at home. I mean, it's going all over the place. The way you stop something like this is you get into a lockdown, and this is what a lockdown looks like. It looks like that. There's no traveling going on, and there's nobody's moving, right? Because remember those little bouncing balls from yesterday? The way you stop and slow something down like this, the way you get a curve like they had here in Lodi, is you have to have nearly all of the balls in that metaphor stationary. That's people not moving around, interacting, bumping into each other. Everybody's got to have face masks. I still haven't heard word one from my government in the United States about what they're going to do about the mask shortage, when it's going to be alleviated, and how they're going to distribute them when the time comes. Because as soon as everyone has a face mask, that'll be great. But I could still go out today here in Massachusetts, where we have a certified set of clusters and hotspots inside the state, and still see practically nobody wearing a face mask. So it still hasn't penetrated yet. How long will it take to get this all under control? Well, it depends how long before you can get everybody wearing a face mask. But unfortunately, my government decided that the thing to do, instead of admitting that we had a mask shortage due to boneheaded decisions and a failure to plan, they decided the thing to do was to shame people into not wearing masks by telling them that they were probably going to wear them wrong and do more harm than good. That was really not appropriate. Aggressive testing, of course, you got to have that. We still don't have aggressive testing in the United States. We still don't. Not even close. It's hard to get tested here still. You got to make it easy. And you got to do all this rigorous contact tracing. It's hard work. You got to hire up a bunch of people to do that kind of stuff. It's tricky, It takes real skill to figure out how to do that well. You got to pay for all this stuff. We still don't know how this stuff's going to get paid for. We don't even know. I mean, I've seen limited things about even how people are going to end up getting their rent paid, or what happens to all the bars and restaurants that got closed down. We don't know how those. It's just really an uncoordinated problem right now. All right, you got to stay home. All right, and the way you do that. So here, look at all these school closings now. 32 states. So that leaves 18 states that haven't quite got there yet. But all of these states here have gone to statewide school closures. Okay. And so that includes pretty much all of New England. But there's a few states. Who's missing on there? I see Texas looks like they're missing. Some pretty big states. Still haven't gone all the way there. And as well, we see here that Governor Newsom out of California urges all those who are 65 and older or have chronic conditions to isolate themselves at home. Okay. So yeah, that's difficult to do all at once. This is why I was telling people to prepare a long time ago. I think if you give people time to prepare, it's really hard now that the stuff is out and about and it's endemic in your local region. And, if you only have a few days of supplies on hand, we wasted time. We squandered time. I should be a little bit more forceful about that. And down here in L.A., the L.A. mayor went ahead and issued an executive order and closed the following establishments. So all bars and nightclubs, all dine-in restaurants, I guess dine-out restaurants are okay, entertainment venues, gyms, and fitness studios. So again, March 16th. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty big jolt to the lifestyle of a lot of people. And of course, continuing the stay home, look what we've got going on here as well. New York and the Connecticut governor and New Jersey governor all jointly announced Monday the states will temporarily shut down movie theaters, gyms, casinos, and allow bars and restaurants to only offer takeout. Okay. Ohio governor announced Sunday afternoon that the state government will issue an order closing all bars and restaurants beginning at 9 p.m. Illinois' governor ordered all bars and restaurants in his state to be closed from Monday evening through March 30th, so that's 2 weeks from now. In Massachusetts, has banned all gatherings over 25 people, so we're sneaking that number down. And ordered restaurants to be takeout only through April 17th, so that's a full month. And we heard that before. And Washington announced the temporary shutdown of restaurants, bars, entertainment, recreational facilities statewide. Again, takeout's fine. And Michigan, state's going to temporarily shut down bars, restaurants, other establishments. So you can see this economic impact is going to be just really hard on these small enterprises right here, the bars, the restaurants, things like that. It's going to be, I don't have any clue as to how the economic impact of that is going to be mitigated or what's going to happen next. I've got maybe a hint around that, but I'm not totally sure yet. Yes, this is a very bad virus. Let me make this just slightly bigger here. So why not? 2 U.S. ER doctors are now in critical condition with the coronavirus. And so, they were infected with the coronavirus somehow. And one is in his 40s in the state of Washington. The second is a 70-year-old from New Jersey. And the physician in New Jersey leads his institution's emergency preparedness and was admitted to the hospital several days ago with upper respiratory problems. Interesting. Usually it's lower. And he remains in isolation in its intensive care unit. So both in critical condition. So again, even with the best of care and with the most urgent of care, you're going to be potentially really hit hard by this thing. France, the coronavirus outbreak in France is very worrying, deteriorating very fast. The number of cases doubles every 3 days, according to the head of the country's health services. So tonight, just probably an hour or two after I finished recording this, Macron is going to announce, the only question is it a total or a partial containment? And by containment, they mean full-on quarantine, you can't leave your house kind of a thing. So that will be announced tonight, and we'll find out what that's all about. But France is going into a full lockdown. Yesterday, I talked about you need to prepare for a lockdown in the United States. I agree with that. I still, that's a little premature, but not that premature because, it's just a matter of time before we get to where these other countries are, because that's how this thing works. All right, the economic impacts of all of this are just going to be simply enormous. Not just the economic impacts, but the financial system impacts. And of course, we've been tracking this for a while. I'm not an economist, but I play one on the internet. I've spent a lot of time studying how the financial system works and talking about that for the past decade to my subscribers. And so I track the Fed a lot and the Federal Reserve, and I've been very critical of central banks for the past decade because I think what they've done is blow gigantic bubbles, and it's sort of been their way, and they've had a lot of fun doing it. But the problem with bubbles is every bubble's in search of a pin, and the coronavirus isn't just a pin. It was like a whole shotgun of pins pushed at this. And so now there's a really, really deep problem, and it's a little bit arcane. You have to know where to look, and maybe you've heard some of these quirky terms like repo operations or quantitative easing or QE or all that stuff. But roughly speaking, there's this gigantic financial machinery and plumbing happening behind the scenes that you never see, and it's all leverage speculators and computer algorithmic trading and, all kinds of like crazy financial strategies, which are all around financialization, which is simply this. Financialization is making money with money. And so that's all fun and games until something in that system breaks. It broke in 2008. This is breaking much more dramatically because this is not only just breaking financially, but it's breaking out in the real world economy at the same time. So think about like how do you print money to correct for whatever's happening or not happening here? It's really very difficult to do. But yesterday, on Sunday, the Federal Reserve brought out its biggest bazooka, slashed rates all the way to near zero. So the target rate is now between 0 and 0.25%, so pretty much zero bound, and initiated another massive round of throwing money into the markets. They call it bond buying or QE. So the Federal Reserve swept into action Sunday in an effort to save the U.S. economy from the fallout of the coronavirus. So that's funny how they put that, save the U.S. economy, because, again, this is the economy, right? That's not what's happening. What the Federal Reserve does when they ride in to save things is they try and save the markets, which they are now conflating with the economy. They're not the same thing. So at any rate, this is not exactly true what's done here. What they're trying to do was save the system, the financial system, and the equity markets. That's what they were actually after here. But at any rate, noble language there. All right. Slashing its benchmark interest rate by a full percentage point, boom, to near zero, and promising to boost its bond holdings by at least $700 billion. Boom. I mean, just two giant moves. And so I'll get back to the rest of this verbiage in a second. So what happened? This is Sunday night. Futures fell and they flatlined. This flatline here is called a lock limit down. That's the largest amount they're allowed to fall in the overnight session. And then markets opened again. And this is, you see that little green thing right there? That was the first circuit breaker that got tripped and then started and fell further after that. And so I had a little recovery and it's fading. And of course, I'm recording this before the markets close. So who knows how this is all going to finish up. But the markets were very unimpressed because, generally speaking, this is what's been happening. And that's after the biggest thing I can imagine. Hacking a full percentage point off, that hasn't happened in a very long time. And by the way, that was a huge amount of the outstanding interest rate percentages that were available. And then, It's putting $700 billion more of printed money out into the system. Just huge. And for the markets to fall on that news, not a good sign. So underlining the sense of urgency amid mounting recession fears, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell told a hastily assembled press briefing by telephone that the virus's disruption to lives and businesses meant second quarter growth would probably be weak. Not just weak, it's going to be negative. I mean, you heard it here. It's going to be very negative. And it was hard to know how long that pain would last. That left him advocating a clear role for fiscal policy to help cushion the blow. So here he's saying, you know what? We're going to print as much money as you need. We're going to print lots and lots of money, okay? We're going to print lots of money. And they're going to increase its bond holdings. That means treasury bonds. So he's saying, he's telegraphing to the fiscal side of the story, which is Congress and the Senate, hey, you guys and gals just, spend as much as you want. We'll be monetizing it over here. So Congress will be issuing debt and the Fed will be buying that debt. So that's how that whole little scheme works. At any rate, here we are. I wanted to put even the timestamp on when I grabbed this because this is astonishing what we're seeing here. Things like Apple, big nameplate things, down nearly 10%. Microsoft, 11.3%. Facebook, almost 12% there. Google, nearly 9.5% there. So just all over the place. Very, very strong damage is happening here, including JP Morgan, Bank of America. Those are down 13, 14, Wells Fargo, 8, Citi, 18%. Oh my goodness, right? Why? Because the money center banks are absolutely going to get crushed by all of this. And one of the things, though, one of the reasons these guys are doing really bad, and I'm got a little chuckle in my voice, is because the other thing that the Federal Reserve did that isn't announced right here is they took away something called interest on excess reserves. They would print up a bunch of money, give it to the banks. The banks would then put it back at the Fed, and then the Fed would pay them interest on it. Sounds like a great little racket, right? Excuse me. That was just free profits for the banks. That cookie jar got taken away, so the money center banks not too happy with that. This is all just getting started. I actually think the economic impacts off of this are going to be absolutely legendary. I didn't put in here the oil data, but it looks like we're going to have the largest fall in oil consumption in our data series that we've got, and it brings us back to a level of oil consumption last seen 10 years ago. And of course, we're not having a lot of oil consumption because for every car you don't see here, there's another plane that isn't in the air right now. So lots and lots of economic activity not happening. All right, this was a quick one today. The conclusions are this is going to visit every single country. They should each use that time very wisely. So Canada, Australia, I put your data up there, but other countries that are like that, even though you haven't got to the boom stage, don't fool yourself. It is coming. That is the nature of this virus. It's going to come. And if you think somehow you're going to dodge the boom because you haven't quite got there yet, you're just deluding yourself, and you've entirely run against the data. Now I'm talking about you, Sweden, and other countries too. All right, early interventions. Oh, not the PNPIs, the NPIs, non-pharmaceutical interventions. That first P shouldn't be there. They work. So what does that mean? Social distancing, isolation, banning large gatherings, really encouraging people to stay home. But you have to couple that. If you're a government, you have to couple that with answer people's questions, like how are they going to get food in their house? Are you relying on everybody to decide for themselves when they leave their homes and go out to the store? Are you providing face masks? Are you providing any rent or mortgage relief for people? What are you doing about that? Because if you don't give people some sense of how their basic lives and resources for their lives are going to be accounted for, your non-pharmaceutical interventions aren't going to work. So that's just my point there. Hey, lockdowns, they're coming because especially if you live in a society where people don't really respect stuff, or you got a lot of dummies, who think quarantines don't apply to them, or all that other stuff. That's where the lockdowns have to come into place. And that's really, honestly, I think what has to be done if you want to avoid crushing your healthcare system, which I think everybody would really like to avoid. The economic and financial system impacts they're gigantic. They're accumulating. These are wounds that are going to be very, very hard to address. Things are breaking as we speak in the plumbing of the financial system, which got had a quadrillion dollars or more of derivatives piled on there and all sorts of leverage speculating. It got crazy. It got nutty again, and we should have learned the lesson in 2008 and undid all that stuff, but we doubled down on it. Thanks, Federal Reserve. What a bunch of dummies there. Bernanke, Yellen, Greenspan. And now Powell, just a bunch of dummies. Honestly, I have to say that. That's absolutely the case. Dogmatically adhered to this idea of blowing bubbles and riding to the rescue. But guess what? Can't do that this time. Each of us has that vital role in flattening the curve. Please do your part. Stay home. And of course, it didn't have to be this way. In Canada and Australia, you still have time in this story. There are countries that still have time. The United States still has a little bit of time in the story, but not a lot. And we have to immediately get ourselves to a condition where we can flatten the curve, and we do that by slowing the spread of this virus, which we do by social isolation and distancing. All right. That's all I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.
Hi folks, Adam Taggart here. Chris Martenson and I are the co-founders of Peak Prosperity. If you want to get alerted whenever we release a new video from Chris, just click the red subscribe button right beneath the YouTube video player. Once you've done that, a little bell icon will appear right next to it. Click on that bell. It looks like this. And that's it. The next time we publish a video from Chris, you'll immediately receive a notification from YouTube. Thanks for watching our videos.